Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Folk Talk Academy lecture. My name is Tom Besford. I am the Chief Executive of English Folk Expo, and delighted to welcome today Matt Bartlett from Midnight Mango, who's going to be talking to us shortly. But a few bits of housekeeping first. This lecture is being captioned, and so if you want to click the CC button on your screen, you'll be able to see live captions as they happen. I'll also post a link to a page of adjustable captions in the chat. There's a question and answer function on Zoom, which allows you to post any questions that you have for Matt, which we'll hopefully have time to pick up at the end. This lecture is being recorded and will be available on folktalkacademy.com, along with 47 other lectures, presentations, and a variety of other materials, including essays, student union stuff, and loads of things there, which is free to anyone who's interested in building a career in the music industry. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Matt now to talk about growing a live career. Over to you, Matt.
Hello. I'm just going to set up my sharing, which takes a little moment. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be asked to do this talk on growing a live career. Just whilst my slides get processed, which takes a moment, I just wanted to say thanks to Folk Expo for inviting me to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about growing a live career. There we go. So my name is Matt Bartlett. I come from Midnight Mango, which is a live booking agency. And so first of all, let's get straight in and check this is working, which I think it is. There we go. So I want to talk first of all then about what the different steps that I'm going to go through as I go through this talk. And I want to separate up an artist's live career into the time before they get an agent, and also what they can do to get an agent, and then what the live agent can bring to their live career once they've come on board. But first of all, I want to go back even further than that and have a little talk about music and what it means to us as people and what it means to you. So you could experience live music in a number of different ways, and we can separate these up into kind of three broad areas. You could either listen to music and enjoy it. You might be at a show listening to some music, or you might be listening to some recorded music. So you could be the passive experiencer of that music. You could be working in music as a music professional. You might be an agent, you might be a promoter, you might be working for a record label, a radio, whatever. You know, that can be your thing with music, or you can be a creator. If you're a creator, then you're going to be either writing music or playing music somehow, performing music, and that's going to be then you as a creator. If we look at those creators, then, as I mentioned before, you're a player, singer, writer, these things. But you could be more than one of the things we just mentioned. You could be someone who likes to experience it as an audience, someone who is a music professional, and you can be a writer and a player as well. I mean, we have people who work with us who are also in bands as well and take that very seriously. So you have to think about how much time you're going to give to your music. And, you know, for different people, it's going to be different amounts of time. And it's going to be important for some people to different levels. You might play an instrument. It might be super important in your life. You might sing in a choir. You might be someone who goes to see shows. You might be what one might call a hobbyist, someone who is involved in music as a hobby. It might be somebody, you might be somebody who is making a living out of it, like I am. you know, or as a creator, you might be somebody who's actually playing enough shows and selling enough records to actually, for that to become your livelihood. And you might be somewhere in between, you know, you might be a creator, but then you might have to have another job on the side to keep yourself going. All of that is totally valid, right? Totally valid and totally important, because music means so much to so many people. It can be the source of achievement. It can be a source of satisfaction. It can be enlightening, music. I mean, it can also heal. And as one of the artists I represent, Adrian Edmondson, always says, it can be a source of maximum joy. It can be a fantastic thing. And it is for so many people. But then it's not surprising, right? It's really not surprising that so many people want to make music a bigger part of their lives. So many people want to be a professional musician. And what we mean by a professional musician is somebody who makes a living from their music, or somebody who makes a really good living from their music. That's what we mean by a professional musician. It's someone who's so, you know, it is such an important part of their lives that that's what they want to do in their professional life. That's what they want to spend most of their time doing. And it's these that are the people who agents are interested in, all right? Assuming it's that the musician is plays out live, because obviously there are plenty of musicians who actually don't tour and don't play live. But anyway, we're interested as agents, as professional musicians. And as a musician, you want to be successful. You want to be satisfied in the music that you make and the people that listen to it. And you want to be valued by people. And ultimately, you want to be happy. But here's the thing, right? Guess what? That's what agents want as well. We want to be successful, and we want to be satisfied, and we want to be valued, and we want to be happy as well. Okay. I mean, that doesn't just go for musicians and agents, but the point I'm making is coming up. So in our lives, we're all limited by time, right? We only have so much time that we can do so many things. As agents, we can't help everybody. We can't even help many. We can only help a small number of artists. And those are the artists that we say eventually come onto our roster. The personal roster of that agent. For us at Midnight Mango, we have each agent that works for Midnight Mango has their own roster, and those artists, perhaps somewhere between 10 and 20 artists, that they represent and they spend their time on. So if we're going to become happy as agents, successful, satisfied, valued, then we have to make good choices about the people that we work with. On one level, we have to choose, well, people we work with as colleagues. I mean, certainly if you're an employer, then you have to choose the right people that work with you. You have to choose as an agent who you work with as promoters. You don't want to be working with promoters where it's not working out, the show's not successful, it's difficult to get the money at the end. So you choose those clients. And of course, you have to choose who you represent as musicians. Of course, musicians must choose their agent carefully too, as well. And I could do a whole webinar about that, how a musician might choose their agent. But that's for another day. Let's think about for a moment the people that you work with as musicians, right? So if you're a music creator, then you want to spend your time creating music. To get good at creating music, to get good at your craft, to get good at songwriting, to get good at performing, you need to spend a lot of time focusing on those things. But there's loads more to do, isn't there? There's loads more as an artist when you're starting out, when you're breaking, when you're trying to begin your career as a professional musician. Then you have to think about the shows that you're going to promote. You don't have an agent or a promoter to do that for you. You might have to do that. You need to think about your socials. You need to think about keeping up to date with them, your mailing list, your fan base, all of this stuff, your image, how you're presented, whether you're getting reviewed, all of that stuff you kind of want to think about, right? Yeah, there isn't enough time to do that. And because of that reason, you want to get people on board who are skilled in those things. So you have to involve other people and you have to build a team. You cannot be a professional musician in isolation. You just don't have the time, and you wouldn't be a great musician because you wouldn't have time to work on the things that you do. But here's the kicker, right? If those experts are going to choose you, you have to get some of the way first. You have to get some of those things done first. So you kind of have to start when you're starting to develop as a professional musician, or that's the pathway that you're carrying on, then you're going to have to do some of those things first in order to get noticed. In other words, you're going to have to do that if you're going to become successful, satisfied, valued, and happy. Okay. Now, when we at Midnight Mango think about who we're going to take on as an artist, then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we make that decision, because I think it's really important about how that maybe shapes your approach to music, your music, and how you create that. But when we so people write to us and ask us, would you like to represent us? The first thing we do is we listen to the music and we think about, is this music unique? Unique's a kind of interesting word because it means that it's one of a kind. It means it's maybe not exactly like other things. If we find somebody writes to us with a 4-piece band that have got bass, drums, guitar, vocals, and the vocal is standard, it may be really good, and the songwriting is interesting, good tunes maybe, but it's just like a lot of others, then that's not unique, and we're probably not going to be interested in that, right? Unique is something in the voice, right? That's crucial. Something in the voice that really makes it stand out. Something in the songwriting where there's a tune in there, a melody that we know is going to hook people in and make them listen to it. So that's the first thing that we're going to consider. But then we're going to ask a couple of questions, and these are pretty crucial. Is the artist popular already? Like, if they're popular already and we like them, they probably are unique. And if they're popular already, then maybe that's the only question we need to ask. Do we like them and are they popular? Because then we can engage them and take them on and book some tours, and it's not so hard. And and they've probably been represented by another agent in the past, and they've wanted to move to Midnight Mango for some reason, or maybe whatever. We might just take them on at that point. But if, as we're talking about in this lecture, do they have is the artist a new artist, breaking artist, emerging artist, whatever you want to call it? Do they have the potential to become popular? And that's really key, because we're then trying to think about somebody as having the potential, something in the future. So it's like a bet, it's like, I think that will happen. And so we need to think about the different things that are associated with perhaps that actually happening. So we think about their promotion, their self-promotion, we think about their image, we think about really important one, the video, which we'll come to a little bit later, but have they got a really good video that stands out, that's storyboarded, that's that we can use, and not necessarily for their audience, their fan base, if you like, but actually something that we can use as agents. All right, we look at the artist. Are they persistent? Have they been active? Have they been proactive? Have they been doing things and working hard? I mean, so many people get into music and then as a job, thinking they want to become a professional, and then they end up with a different job. How dedicated is that person or that band? Are they popular, right? it seems like an obvious one to ask, and it seems like an obvious one to answer that probably not at the moment, but we can look at their popularity in their hometown. Are they doing shows where they've sold tickets in their hometown? Are they popular on socials, on Insta and Facebook and or whatever other social we want to talk about? How many streams have they got on their Spotify platform? You know, these are things we look at. Do they have a manager already? Do they have label interest already? Okay. I mean, they're not going to have all these things, but we're going to look at all those things and then get some kind of idea about whether or not that artist is worth taking on, worth it to us. And then say we've decided that, then we do want to take them on. Then there's the next step is actually, do we have space, right? Remember I spoke about how we as agents, we can only really spread ourselves, you know, across 10 or 15 artists, and we can't spread ourselves too thinly, because if we do, then we're not doing the other artists that we represent any justice. Bear in mind as well, if, you know, as an agent, you 10, 15, 20 maybe artists that you represent, whilst you're representing them, there'll be some of those that are completely not active as well. So actually the number is kind of smaller that you're working on at any one time. So we have to know that there's an agent who's got the time, and that agent clearly has to be enthusiastic about it. I mean, there's literally no point in working with an artist unless you're enthusiastic about it. So do they have the time? It's super important. Okay, we found someone in the agency who can take them on. They've got the time. Everything's falling into place. We're happy with that. What actually happens next? So the artist has already done these things to get to this point. They've already promoted themselves in many ways to attract attention of other people in the music industry. The story doesn't start with the agent. It started a long time ago, right? But now they're with us. And I want to talk a little bit about the toolkit that we as agents have to take their career to the next stage. Now, before I do that, I just want to make a point that this lecture is about up to around 2 years into the artist's career with their agent. All right. If we wanted to talk about after that, then that would be a whole other subject. Okay. But we're talking about emerging talent now and the toolkit that we as agents have to deal with, to progress the artists that we have that are emerging. And, you know, actually, that's another point that's worth making, is that, you know, not all of our artists are emerging. We've got a much smaller number who are emerging. So, you know, we have to spend a lot of time on those, a lot of time on our emerging talent, and we get little in reward from that financially. So it's a big investment for us, those first 2 years. Okay, so let's talk about the toolkit. And we'll start talking, first of all, about how we get our artists to the next stage. Now, remember we spoke about the team, and the artist may have some people that are part of the team, their team, but the chances are they haven't. The chances are that actually the first thing that we're going to do is to try and increase the number of people that are part of their team. When I say team, I mean people who are interested in this artist, and maybe they don't work with them yet, but maybe they will soon. We want to get those people together and, you know, get them to a place where they're like, I like that artist. I think I would work with them in the future. They're not going to commit yet either, but let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that they already have a manager. They may not, all right, because we quite often work with artists who aren't managed, or who are self-managed, or who have, you know, somewhat a key person in their actual band or their actual in their outfit that is making a lot of the managerial decisions. But let's assume that this emerging artist has got a manager, and we want to build their team. So the first thing we're going to do, if we're super early, is to get them into a place, or the first part of our toolkit is to expose them to other people, and this can be done through getting them onto a showcase gig. Now, we can't necessarily put them onto a gig where they're headlining in London straight off the bat, because they wouldn't sell enough tickets. And if we were to say, right, okay, so we'll get somebody from PR down, or we'll get somebody who might become their promoter in this town down, and then they stand in a room with only 2 people in the band playing, then that's not going to look good, and that's going to have like a detrimental effect on what we're trying to achieve. So we can use showcase billings, showcase gigs to do that, because there will be several bands playing on the bill, and those bands will hopefully all bring a few people, and there might be someone at the top who maybe be worth a few more tickets, and we can get a room with at least some people in it that these tastemakers, should we call them, have come down to watch. So that could be one of our roles as a booking agent, is to get the band or the artist onto a showcase billing. And that's almost always in London, by the way, which is a bit depressing, frankly, but it nearly always is in London, because that's where a lot of people in the music industry work. I mean, just as an aside, I don't live in London, right? But people who work in PR, you know, pretty much most of them actually have a presence in London and get to a show. Sure, if there's a super buzz about the artist, then an A&R person might travel. But if there isn't, then it's probably going to be in London, right? Also, the other thing is that showcase gig is probably not going to be on a Friday or a Saturday, because those industry professionals are probably going to be on the tube home at that point. And it's also the other thing is that you don't really want your artist on that late either, because people will be going home and all that sort of stuff, who are those people that you've asked to come down. So that's kind of the first thing in our toolkit. The second thing in our toolkit is festivals. Festivals are, you know, fantastically important. The thing that makes them really great, festivals, is that they're curated by people who really like to put artists on that are never heard of before. Sure, they've got to commit with their headline acts and their sub-headline acts as well, but they also tend to be people that also really like to put new music in front of people. Well, they're the ones that we really like anyway. So, you know, the festival organizer is on our side already, and they're the ones that we try and make great relationships with as an agency, so that we can phone them up. Now, as we mentioned earlier in this talk, there's so many people who want to be professional musicians, so many hundreds and thousands of people who want to do that. And we as agents, we can work as a bit of a filter for people who curate acts at festivals. So we have a lot of festival organizers who will come to us for suggestions, and we can make those suggestions, and they can trust us because they trust our judgment in the music that we put across to them. Doesn't mean they'll choose it, but it means that their pool of talent that they've got to choose from is a smaller one, a more manageable pool of talent, right? And the next thing that festivals have is they have a budget, right? That means that we can get some emerging talent out onto the festival circuit across the summer, and they can actually get some money, right? Not huge amounts of money, but enough to keep them rolling from one festival to the next and have a bit left over, you know? So that is really hard to do with small gigs, and it's impossible to do with showcase billings. So, you know, that's super great to do that. Often these festivals will have multiple stages. Some of those stages may be particularly for emerging talent, or some of the slots that are on earlier in the day have a relatively small budget against them. And the festival curator can really think about what new talent they can put into those spaces to expose to. Now, we spoke about how festival programmers love to put new music in front of people, or and to make those choices, and feel in some way kind of responsible for exposing that music to people, and they absolutely are. But then you also get people at who come to festivals who pay punters who pay to come to festivals to do that as well. They're people who really like new music, and they want to go out of that festival and go home and tell people about it. Maybe they're just people who really like music, but they might write a blog, or they might write a fanzine. You know, they might be people who actually can connect with a lot of other people and tell each other about it. People who make playlists on Spotify, those kind of people. Now, they wouldn't be at that festival specifically for your artist, but they've come and they've seen and they've enjoyed, and they take it away. And then there are just regular people who come, see, enjoy, take away. All right. And those happen in those festivals in different parts of the country. And that's how you build some knowledge about the artist from a live point of view, right? And knowledge about the artist in different places in the country. Okay. So you're building their audience through putting them out into as many festivals as you can in their first season. That's a key way that we work at Midnight Mango to do that. So festivals are super important. They're super vital to increasing that audience. I remember I was speaking a little while ago about building your team. When the agent got together with the artist in the first place before the festival season, they had this notion that festival season was going to happen, and they were going to book it, and they had faith in the music that that the artist was making to do that. But the artist manager wanted to talk about releasing songs, releasing music, and wanted to talk about the artists themselves writing music, which was going to be released. And that was going to be released in the autumn after the festival season took place. And they had a conversation with the agent, and the agent said, okay, right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to book a few little headline dates in that autumn. It's going to be important. You are going to make that jump from being like a artist that plays on showcase billings, maybe ticketed show back in your hometown, but anywhere else it's going on to a free entry show or something. So it's these shows that I'm going to book, they're going to be important, right? Because now there's going to be a ticket on them. So we're only going to get people coming if they're committed to paying £8, £10. God forbid £8. I'm so fed up with these shows being £8. Anyway, that's another story. So these headline shows in these that we're going to book, you've got to get your ducks in a row. If I'm going to book those, you've got to do that, right? You've really got to write that song, and that song has got to be recorded and released in the run up to that. You're going to have to get the PR involved at that point, who's going to big up this release of this single or that release of that single. And then say these shows are in November, then we get to the point in November where people have seen you at the festival, and they've seen you on Spotify playlists, and they've seen you on in articles in newspapers, or on, you've had exclusive video released. Oh, did I mention video? That's the one there, right there, the video, right? Don't release a single without a video, please. Then, that is going to get you to a place where these headline shows that you've got coming up are actually going to function, and you're actually going to get some people to them. So this whole thing is absolutely vital, that you get that right, because if you don't get that right, then us as agents will end up with eggs on our faces, and the promoters will be not happy with you or with me, and they're going to be like, well, only 3 people came, right? So that's kind of, I just wanted to stress that point about the whole team thing and everybody doing their bit in the team, from the artist to the manager, to the agent, to the PR, all of that. So that's how we book these. That's what, well, so we've kind of talked about headline shows now. So these are small headline shows, right? If I was bringing someone from Ireland across to do that, then I would probably be talking about 2 weekends and the bit in the middle. If it was somebody from GB, then it would probably just be the 2 weekends, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 6 dates, maximum 10 dates if you're traveling across water, maybe. And those dates, so they would be in key places, by the way. So they would be key places. They'd be in Glasgow, Newcastle, Manchester, probably one of Leeds, Sheffield or Nottingham, Bristol, London, Brighton. So they would be the key places that we would look at. It might be Birmingham in there. I mean, it's not always exactly the same, but we're trying to get to those cities where we have historically found that we get more people attending music events for emerging talent, right? It's going to be quite a lot of work for us to do that. We're going to be counting tickets all the way, sorting it all out, and we're going to make nothing out of it. And the band is going to lose money through doing it because of the traveling, and they've got to find places to stay and all of that. It's a necessary evil, right? Maybe that's the wrong phrase. It's necessary and it's not evil, but you have to get through it. It's like a rite of passage is probably a better way of talking about it. It's what we might call, or is often called, the toilet circuit, which is an odd thing to call it. But anyway, presumably because some venues actually are in toilets. But anyway, that's another story. So the headline shows, that's the other thing in our toolkit. Now, when we come on to that sort of like post 2-year period, which we're not talking about today, then that's different. That's like, yeah, we're trying to make some cash at that point and actually push the artist forward. But that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, so the next thing in the toolkit is conference events. Conference events are fantastic. I love conference events. They're the high point. I spend most of my working life in a desk. I mean, obviously COVID, all that, but normally, even before COVID, you'd spend a lot of time in front of your desk talking to the programmers and promoters and all of that sort of thing. And then along comes a conference, and you get to go to a conference. It's brilliant. You get to travel somewhere. You get to meet the people that you work with in real life. You get to network with new people you haven't met before. You know, you have a chance to see other artists, and most importantly, you have a chance to expose the artists that you represent to those people that you normally work with. So conference events are great, and there are loads of them. You know, people know them. There's like Reeperbahn in Germany, the IFF in London, the Great Escape in Brighton. There's Showcase Scotland and Folk Expo on the more folky side of things. There's Eurosonic. There's South by Southwest in America. There's Folk Alliance in America. There's ECMAs on the west coast, east coast of Canada. There's Breakout West on the west coast. There's Big Sound in Australia. You know, there are, you know, if you want to make some money in the music industry, start a conference, right? Because that's the way that a lot of people seem to be doing that. Anyway, fantastic events, right? A couple of things to say about music conferences from the band's point of view. Right? You, as an emerging artist, you're probably only going to get one opportunity to play at a lot of these. You're probably only going to get one opportunity to play at the Great Escape, one opportunity to play at South by, one opportunity to play at Reeperbahn. Those ones I mentioned, almost definitely you're only going to get one. Eurosonic, one. So it's super important that you don't go to them too early. Going to you know, say you've written a fantastic song and you've got a fantastic video, and you've done this festival season, and you've of small side shows at festivals, and you've done your your 6 or so key headline shows, and you think, right, it's time to go to Eurosonic. It probably isn't time to go to Eurosonic. You know, maybe it's time to go to the Great Escape now. It might be, but it might not be, because you won't be going next year if you go this year. So you have to think about that really carefully when you're talking about music conference, and you have to think about the trajectory that your artist is actually taking. Now, the other thing is that the programmers, they know this, right? Music conference programmers, they totally know this, and they're not going to just be listening to your agent putting it forward. If I put an artist to Great Escape to perform, then the programmer there is going to come back to me and say, what else is going on? And I'm going to say X, Y, and Z. I'm going to big it up because I'm good at bigging things up. That's what I do. I'm an agent. But they're going to take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt, and they're going to want to hear that from somewhere else. They're going to want to hear it from a label, perhaps. They're going to want to hear it from a promoter. A lot of these events are actually owned by promoters, so they're going to want to hear it from their own promoters. They're going to want to hear it from a PRO, you know, or from a label, innumerable different places. So getting an artist onto a conference is not just the agent's task. It quite often is the agent who instigates it, who makes it happen, and it's definitely going to be the agent who attends the event, right? But it can't just be the agent who's going to get them to that conference, because the programmer will see through that, and they're going to want to see other things going on. So a significant effort needs to be made there. But conferences are fantastic, right? They are fantastic. They're great. Some of them, I mean, thinking of IFF in particular, I mean, it's a great platform to get your artists playing at European festivals, for example. You know, Eurosonic, kind of the same, actually. It's a great way of getting bookers to want to work with an artist if you've got them playing at Reeperbahn or Eurosonic. You know, Folk Expo is a great opportunity to get in front of a lot of folk festivals, and a lot of rootsy sort of Americana festivals. Americana, didn't mention that. AMA's in AMA UK, relatively new event, which is also fantastic and really sort of growing. So we love conferences. They're super useful. They need to be super useful to the artist as well. But you need to understand how to exploit them as best you can. Okay, then the last thing I wanted to talk about in the toolkit is support tours in the agent's toolkit. This is one that is often considered by artists as the holy grail of promotion. You know, we want to get this tour support. We're going to get on this tour support, and we're going to get in front of a load of people. We're going to sell a bunch of merch. Not only that, we're going to get it play out with a band that we super admire. You know, maybe it's somebody that actually, maybe it's somebody that the emerging talent is a bit of a fan of. You know, this is the thing. You know, we don't care about the money. We just care about getting on that tour support, because that's going to be the gateway to fame and fortune. Okay, a couple of things need sorting out here. There's a bit of myth busting that needs to go on here. A bit of myth busting about the agent's role in this process, a bit of myth busting about what it can actually achieve for you. So the first thing to think about here is who actually chooses the supporting lineup, right? Who actually chooses the supporting lineup? Now, imagine if you are that famous artist, you are that headline artist who is playing, and you have spent so much time and effort getting to where you are. Who do you think you are going to want to choose the artist that is doing the support? Hello, you want to choose it, right? The headline act wants to choose it. That's who wants to choose it. And they will have skin in the game, and they will be the ones that say, well, actually, I want so-and-so to do it, or I want so-and-so to do it, or I want so-and-so because I know them to do it, or I want so-and-so because I'm worried about selling tickets and this artist can actually shift a few tickets for me by helping with the promotion. You know, these are the things that they are going to think about. These are the things that they and their management are going to think about. So, you know, imagine a situation where an agent says to the artist or to the artist manager, well, I want this act to support. Please, can you let them support? And they're like, well, we rate your opinion, Matt. We think they're a good artist, but we've got some other ideas. So, you know, that is not, that is totally the normal situation. And it doesn't matter the size of the agency, whether you're a kind of mid-sized agency like we are at the minute, or whether you're small, or whether you're big, then the headline act is going to be the one that's going to want to choose the artist. And this is a problem because you find that people come to you as an agency based on the other people that you represent, and they think, well, if I come to that agency, then maybe I can get on and do a tour support with them. Now, there is some truth in that, right? There is some truth that we, you know, as a kind of family of artists, I suppose, to some extent, we can make those suggestions, we can ask those questions, but we can't make that happen necessarily, right? And so that's a really important myth to bust. The way that you actually get on to a tour support is twofold, right? First of all, you ask your agent to approach another agent who is doing the headline, right? And so that's fine. We know every agent in the country that there is to know. We can approach any of them. It's not a problem. We write to them and say, we're interested in that tour support. You know, probably already gone, might have already gone because somebody else has made a decision somewhere else. The artist has already decided, or that kind of thing. So anyway, we can write to that agent, and then the agent of the headline act starts to put a list together. And they put a list together of the artists that have been suggested. The artists probably may not even know that they've been put forward at that point. And the agent of the headline act pulls together a list, drops a note back to the original agent saying, that's fine, I've put you on the list. And then presents this list to the artist and the manager with possible suggestions of artists that they might do, who might do the tour support for this well-known act. So let's just assume that the management and the artist now want to make a decision about who is going to do that support. They're going to look at that list, and how are they going to make the decision of who is going to do their tour support? They're going to look at it and say, oh yeah, like that music, that could work. Oh yeah, no, don't like that. No, oh yeah, that maybe. Oh yeah. Oh, hang on a minute, I know them. They're from my hometown. That'd be quite good. They're pretty well known already. They had a fantastic festival season. They're selling a decent number of tickets on their headline shows at the minute. Maybe that's a good one. Okay, so you get the message. They work down the list, and they make their choices based on other reasons which are not to do with you as an emerging talent. And then here's the next thing, right? And this is really quite crucial, is most artists who become successful, right, only do one tour support, only do one proper tour support across the country. And then after that, they're away. Right? If you're the artist that's always doing tour supports, then that's not a fantastic look, actually. So what you want really is to build your profile, build your fan base through the different ways that we've said. Get yourself into a position where you're desirable to support another artist on a tour and make sure it's the right one. Your agent can help you with that. They can join the dots, right? But your agent probably isn't going to be the one making the decisions. Okay, that's kind of the end of the end. I think I've just got one more slide just to recap. So to start with, I talked about the importance of music in our lives and how we make the decision to become a professional artist, professional musician or not. And then I spoke about the things that we can do to attract a booking agent to us as an artist. What are the things that a booking agent is looking for in an artist who they want to take on? And then we spent the last third of the time talking about the different things that the agent has in their toolkit. For the first 2 years, and only the first 2 years, because it should change after that, right? Of an artist's career with their booking agent. Okay, that's it. I've been Matt Bartlett from Midnight Mango. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Matt. That is great, really informative, and loads of things I think for people to get going on. We've got a few questions in the chat and a few things that are kind of working their way through as well. The first question, I suppose, for me is you've described the agent's toolkit was absolutely fascinating, and so many things that people should be thinking about there. If for whatever reason you haven't got an agent, how much of that toolkit can an artist do independently, and how much do you think actually you really do need a third party assisting those conversations?
I mean, it's just the same. It's just the same answer, really. I mean, the way I often think about this is 12,000 years ago, people started farming. And when they started farming and they started growing shit. And when they grew plants, right, then that meant that they could feed other people so that they had time to do something else. And that's the crucial thing. It's all about time. So, you know, you can't become an expert at all of those things and be a musician. You have to try. Those things are available to you, right? You can get onto a showcase gig, right? You can, as yourself, apply to play at Great Escape or whatever. You can, you know, book your own shows and promote your own shows. But you're not going to be as good at it. And if you do that, you're not going to have enough time to focus on your art. So there's this crossover, right? There's this crossover, which is the catch-22, the paradox, whatever you want to call it. There's that period of time where you're trying to get people involved who can do better at these things, but also you've got to do it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really clear. It's one of those things that people just need to keep working at, I suppose. So
it's also another reason. It's another reason it's better to start when you're young, because you've got more time, right? People often ask that question. Well, you know, in relation to how old you are, and you know, why can't you start to become a professional musician at the age of 30? And you absolutely can, right? There's no reason that you can't, but you maybe haven't got time. That's the thing. That's why it's usually younger people who are emerging.
Yeah, because I suppose it's like growing any business from scratch. When you start out, it probably is just going to be you, and you've got to do every single thing that you ever might need to do as part of that business. And as you grow it, then you expand that team. Can I ask about someone has asked here, is it true that you have to buy on to a tour as a support artist?
So that does from time to time happen. Whenever that happens, I say, forget it. It's a waste of time. It's like almost a waste of time. I'm trying to remember of an example of an artist. You know, I've named slip. I remember this artist who bought on to play on a Status Quo show in Spain, and it was like a load of money, and it was pointless. They had no profile in Spain whatsoever, and when they left, they didn't either. So, you know, so buy-ons do happen. They happen in the States more than they happen over here. We occasionally get asked, but actually it's very rare. And I don't like the idea behind it, because it's basically, it's saying that you want to get the artist on because they can afford to, rather than because of the value of their music. And if that's not going to happen, if it's not the value of the music, then, you know, how how actually valuable is it going to be?
Yeah, I think that's really clear. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. There's a couple of questions here that relate to social media and this, and how I suppose your social media numbers relate to the scale or success of your life, career, or otherwise. Probably there's one here which I might just read out, which articulates it quite well. It says you mentioned 3 ways to measure an artist's popularity. Can you give a ballpark figure for what qualifies as popular for each? In other words, how many fans at a local gig versus how many Spotify streams versus how many Facebook follows? Do you think there's a correlation between your live audience?
There is and there isn't. There's So you have to take all of that with a pinch of salt, right? And I've got another whole lecture on this actually, but just to put it in a nutshell, it depends. Most of all, it depends on who your audience is and what social media they use and how much social media they use. And if your audience is more, say your audience is perhaps more a more mature audience, then you're going to look towards Facebook more. And if it's more younger audience, maybe you're looking more to Insta or TikTok or whatever. And so maybe if it's a younger audience, then you'd expect the Spotify numbers to be bigger, or maybe if it's an older audience, the Spotify numbers, are not necessarily so big because maybe the older people aren't accessing Spotify in the same way that younger people are. So it's not. I mean, it definitely is scientific, right? But it's not as simple as saying, oh, you have to get to this in order to get to that. You have to have 1,000 Facebook followers before you can get further. It's one of those judgments that you make in the round as an agent. Like if I was looking at an artist, I would consider the genre, and I would consider the platforms that we looked at, and I would and I would consider the ticket sales if I knew them, right? If the person who'd approached me said that they'd sold 200 tickets, by the way, be honest about that if you do say it. I'd take that all into consideration in the round. It would not be just a simple, oh, they've got a ton of Facebook followers, they must be fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Can you say a bit about the financial arrangement with a booking agent? Is it a fixed fee or is it a percentage?
For most, I mean, go and have a read of some of my blogs in our learning center on the website. There's a lot of information on this. For the most part in contemporary music, it's a percentage of the actual fee that the artist earns for their shows, and it is for us a percentage, and that percentage ranges between about 10 and 15% in the UK, and that depends on the type of agency you're with. In Europe, it's probably more like between 15 and 20%, but in the States, in North America, it's nearly always 10%. But that's how they make their money. Now, there are agents who quite legitimately make it on just on a fee per show basis, and there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that from a business point of view. It's just that we prefer to be making more money when the artist makes more money, and that then not only measures their success through that, but it also encourages us to get them more money, right? If I was getting 150 quid for every show, then my incentive would be to get shows anywhere, not in the right places for their careers.
That, I suppose I hadn't really considered that kind of thing before. That actually, that return is really important. It seems to me like an ongoing conversation then between artist and agent is absolutely vital in deciding what's best for the career and how you're going to grow that and where you're going to play.
I mean, it's vital. I mean, bear in mind, of course, that if you're going to play on these headline shows in small venues that we were talking about, I don't know where, Louisiana, in Bristol, that kind of place, and the agent's only probably going to make about 20 quid at the end of it. After all that work, they've got, the artist makes 250 quid or something like that. The agent's going to make 20 odd quid. I mean, that's not going to pay the bills and put food on the table for anyone. So that represents investment, right? That represents skin in the game. That represents us showing that we're dedicated to that artist and actually doing those shows. That's why sometimes artists, need to be told that, because if you're going to work for someone and you're going to work hard for 2 years and get paid hardly anything, then that has to count.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems to me in the folk sector, we see loads of folk artists who are playing to audiences of around 100 to 150, but not necessarily growing beyond that. Can you think of any sort of strategies to help people get past that ceiling once they reach that kind of level?
Release better records.
Tick, done.
That is the answer to that, because after that point, the agent is reacting. We didn't talk about this today, but we could talk about it. We are reacting to their success. So we make their choices about where we put people. But if they're not going any further, then they have to find another way to do that. And that's not, the agent isn't going to be the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think so.
You're going to be part of the answer, but there's going to have to be other parts.
I've got just a couple more questions, and then we'll be there, and then we'll round off there, Matt. The two I've got here that are still left are, what, with all the rescheduling because of COVID, I'm finding it hard to find live opportunities. What would you suggest?
I mean, that's tough, right? That is definitely tough. And we're all in that same position. I'm not entirely sure I can answer that. I mean, you just have to keep trying. You have to keep looking for opportunities. It's just harder at the moment because all those opportunities have been taken by all the bookings that were made last year. I mean, we have booked shows into festivals this year, particularly where like the American contingent isn't traveling to a festival, so we found opportunities to do that. I mean, that's pretty tough to do if you're if you're an artist, though, because clearly people have come to us as an agency and said, we need some more acts to fill these holes, but they're probably not going to come to individual artists. So yeah, I don't really have an answer to that. No one really has an answer to that. I mean, put yourself on. I'll tell you something interesting, actually, if I've got time. So this is interesting. And actually, maybe that does sort of answer that question. Is I had an artist, one of my agents decided to work with an artist and wanted to book a tour in August. And I was like, why are you doing that? That's this August. All right. He got another job. He still works with us, but he got another job for a few weeks. And he said, Matt, can you help me with this tour? And I said, yeah, okay. Went out, spoke to people across August, and I booked 20 shows, like literally 20 shows in August for a tour. And there were actually venues who were interested in putting on stuff that they had space. It had all been cancelled, blah, blah, blah. So clearly there is, those were sort of small art centres and people I know, and it just sort of came out of the woodwork. And we booked 20 dates for Josh O'Keefe, the guy's called, from Nashville.
Oh yeah, fantastic! I saw him showcasing at AMA, the virtual conference in January.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's possibly all we've got time for, Matt. But I think that last point is really interesting, because certainly with English Folk Expo, we've got a range of gigs in July and August where we wouldn't normally have thought about that kind of stuff. I think there's just appetite for people to get back out there and seeing live music. Matt, do you want to just mention your website? Because I know you've got some fantastic blog posts on there for people to have a look at, and we'll drop that in the Folk Talk Academy website as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. So we're midnightmango.co.uk, and there's a section there of blogs that I've written, and also I've just started something called the Learning Hub, which is where I'm putting quite a lot of my thoughts down. So yeah, I'll probably end up putting this video in there somehow.
Yeah, that would be great. And there's a few other bits and things we didn't come to today, but we'll share that in upcoming talks. So next week that we've got a whole range of conversations. One of them is with myself and Bella Hardy, talking about how to do showcases, what you do when you go to a showcase conference, how you prepare for them, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got a range of information about mailing lists, websites, advanced social media analytics, all that kind of stuff is all next week. So check out the Folk Talk Academy website. There's more talks from booking agents about booking agents, about what do they do, and do I need one, and how do you get one? So have a look, folktalkacademy.com, for a range of other information. But for now, I'd just like to say thank you once again to Matt Bartlett. Thanks, Matt, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.